This week is the final of the DriveWorld Cup, and I've got the Ping G410 Plus going head to head against the Callaway Mavrik. Now it's really interesting that these two have ended up in the final, because these were the two clubs I was stuck between when I was trying to decide what driver I was going to put in play this season. I guess we're about to find out if I made the right decision or not. Let's get on with it. Now in terms of setup, these are both pretty similar. They're both 10.5 heads, but another interesting thing is they've both got shorter than standard shafts. Now, only 3 of the shafts I got fit into the shearing drivers were slightly shorter, and it's interesting these have ended up in the final, and I think it's just because I get that better strike consistency with the short shaft, so even though the club length is reduced, I'm still getting that good club head speed and I'm getting more distance because of a better strike. So it's definitely something to consider if you're going for a custom fit in. You're not always going to get the most distance out of kind of the longest club possible, the way that Bryson kind of goes down that route, but for a lot of club golfers and a lot of tour pros, they actually go down in shaft length to get that better strike consistency that's going to bring up your distance. Right. Since I've been gaming the Callaway all season, I think it makes sense to start here, get some numbers and then see how the ping compares. Good strike, but I left the face a bit open, so questionable direction. That was a bit better. One of my favourite things about this club is the sound. I think they've definitely nailed it this year with the new changes inside the club head, and it's amazing how much difference that makes to the feel of the shot. This feels really good and it sounds great even on like an off strike, and that's the thing I've had the most comments about across the year. Every time I hit it, especially if I'm playing with someone new, they're like, that just sounds great. And it's amazing how much that affects people's decisions on terms of if they like a club or not. I have to say, in terms of strike, these have all been pretty consistent so far. You know, I've been practicing on that plane swing this week and my path is a lot better. Oh, that was a bit toey. That is not going to be good numbers. Spin was up a bit. Carry was only 218, which is definitely my worst so far. Could affect its chances. I don't know what's going on today, but there's barely anything left of the target line, which is virtually unheard of for me. There are a few a bit further right, but generally I hate that big left miss. It's something that I really kind of worry about, so seeing something like more neutral or a bit to the right is definitely preferable. I just flushed that one to finish with. Let's take a look at the numbers. Right, that's 10 shots hit, and I would say in general I was pretty consistent. A few at the start I lost out to the right, and there was one that I caught off the toe, but I'm not going to delete that because I think in a round, if I hit 10 drives, I probably would hit one about the toe, so it is kind of representative, even though I hate that toe shot. So in terms of carry, my average was up at 229. Which is pretty solid for 10 shots, and it wasn't too bad in terms of front to back. Obviously I had that one down at 118, but the deviation was like 7 yards. So would have been a bit better without that shot, but not a massive difference. I mean, the total yards would have only been 230 average anyway if we took that one out, so not the end of the world. Now probably the biggest thing that's actually stand out to me here is the spin is all pretty high. And I have seen that a bit recently. I've also hit some outside on TrackMan and the spin was a bit higher than I would have liked. So we're averaging in kind of 3,700, which is a lot of spin. So it's definitely something to be gained or potentially changed there. Now in terms of club head speed, that's pretty good with this. So my longest shot carried 237, and that's because I had like 97.5 mile an hour of club head speed, which It's a lot more than I typically have, and I do find with this, because the club head feels a bit compacter, looks a bit smaller, I can swing it a bit faster. Sometimes if I have a bigger club head, I just don't feel like I can move it as quick, or on the eye it just doesn't feel like I can go after it. So that's definitely something I like about this driver. I don't really feel like I have to swing it slower if I'm trying to keep it in play. I really do feel like I can just have a rip at it, and it doesn't really seem to affect kind of the dispersion. Now laterally, apart from my first shot, which was like 30 yards right and a big block, all the rest of them were within 18 yards of the target line. Now you're not really going to go very far wrong with that. You really won't be missing any fairways, even if you're missing at 18 right or left, unless it's your pretty tight golf course. On most golf courses you'll be there or thereabouts on the fairway, so if we take 10 shots there, I've missed one fairway really, which is it's pretty good, and that's why I liked this driver. Really for me, I want something that's in play. I'm not necessarily bothered about an extra 2, 3, 4 yards. I want something that's consistent, and I know that I'm going to be able to play my next shot out of the fairway or just not out of the crap. But anyway, let's hit a few shots with the Ping and then we can do a full comparison. Here we go. When the World Cup's on the line, no one really wants to come second, do they? Now instantly I can notice just a difference in weight in here. This club head is a bit bigger and I can feel that in my swing. It doesn't feel like I can move it quite as quickly and freely as I can with the Mavrik. But then having said that, it does feel very stable. I've used a lot of Ping drivers over the years and it is quite comforting to look down at. So it does feel like you're going to be a bit more consistent, but then it doesn't feel like you can swing it quite as naturally as the other clubs. So it's kind of a weird balance between the two. I don't really feel like I'm quite striking this as good as I have been in other weeks, but it's still very consistent in terms of distance, which is interesting because obviously you're not going to have your best days every day, so it's really important to have a club that suits you, whether you're swinging at your best or your worst. There we go, that was a bit better strike. Okay, that definitely wasn't accurate. I mean, the launch monitor did something really weird then. I mean, I definitely didn't hit that low. I think we'll try that one again. Okay, so I've just deleted that one that flew really weird because I really don't know what happened with the numbers there. So in terms of kind of total distance, it definitely felt like I was swinging it slower, and we have seen that in the numbers. So my club head speed was down at 93 on average, and my highest was kind of 95.5, so 2 miles an hour slower than my quickest with the Mavrik. And so then in terms of distance, I'm at a 223 average, which is still pretty decent, but it is 6 yards short than what I had with the Mavrik today. And I would say I just felt like I could float better with the Mavrik. Like I just felt like I was swinging it better today compared to the Ping. And I definitely could notice the jump in the two in terms of like shape and a weight difference. Now, although my distance was down slightly compared to the Mavrik, my kind of front to back dispersion was a bit better. So I wasn't seeing as much deviation. So in terms of kind of hitting your spots out on the course, if you're trying to hit it over bunkers, lay up to other bunkers, hitting that kind of specific zone in terms of distance, then this was a little bit more consistent. Again, I don't know what's happened today, but my first shot was a big block to the right with this. It was still only 25 yards right, which isn't a disaster, but for my other shots, the furthest away from the centre was just over 14 yards right, so again, in terms of fairways, that's pretty consistent. And in terms of compared to the Mavrik, there definitely was more inside 10 yards, missing laterally left or right, so definitely a little bit more consistent in terms of lateral miss. Now again, I would say the spin is a bit higher than I would like on average, so it's averaging at 3,400, but it is a little bit lower than the Mavrik. So in terms of spin consistency, they're both fairly similar, but this would be kind of slightly less spin, so a little bit better. So I really like this graph because it really shows you the dispersion really well and shows you the key differences. And we can see here the Ping is slightly smaller in terms of dispersion, so it has done a bit better. It was just under 900 square yards, which really isn't that much at all. It's probably the best we've seen in this test throughout the whole series. Now, the Callaway wasn't that much worse. It was just over 12,000 square yards. You can see there is a little bit more right biased on it, and in terms of kind of left line, they're both pretty similar. So I would be really happy with either of these, but the Ping definitely has the edge here. Now you can see why it was such a hard decision deciding which one of these to put in play. There really isn't that much to split these at all. Okay, final thoughts. Obviously I've tested these inside today, but I've also had them out on the course and hit them outdoors throughout the year. And really I've been really interested in both the numbers because I've been so interested in which to put in play. And consistently I have chosen to choose the Mavrik. And I think for me you can see this in the numbers today. Obviously 6 yards difference in distance is quite significant. It is almost a club if you were looking at it in terms of maybe like irons. And we do know that distance is a big advantage, so for me, that extra distance is a plus. Maybe I'm losing a little bit in terms of dispersion, but I think we can see that the Mavrik is still pretty tight in terms of dispersion. And I also feel like on off-centre strikes, it does give me that extra forgiveness. Now, some people might argue that dispersion's more important for them, and I could definitely see that argument, but for me personally, I'd rather have a little bit more distance. Overall, my dispersion isn't that bad. I genuinely am pretty consistent with the driver. So for me, I'm going to see the gains more in terms of distance than in that extra little bit of dispersion, but that's going to be different for everyone. I think another big thing with the driver, and also every club, is just what you feel most comfortable with. I definitely felt like I could swing the Mavrik more freely. I think that's down to the slightly smaller club head and just kind of the visual appeal. I do like that gloss look on the top, and we saw that in the numbers. I could just swing it faster and I did feel a little bit more comfortable, and I think at the end of the day that's what came down to in the numbers and the difference. I was just a little bit more comfortable over the ball with the Callaway. Now obviously these are both great drivers. They wouldn't have made it to the final if they weren't. But for me, the Mavrik is the winner here. So what do you think? Have you tried them both? Which one would you pick? Do you think I've made the right decision? The Mavrik's staying in my bag for now, but there are some pretty big driver releases coming up. So make sure you keep your eyes out on the National Golfer channel for more information coming soon.